Welcome back to Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance. I'm Chandler Fleming, owner and lead therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling.
And I'm Victoria Fleming, co-owner and therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. In our show, we discuss various topics and we welcome your ideas and suggestions. There will be a number to reach us at the end of the show. Today's show, though, we are going to focus on cognitive behavioral therapy. So, Chandler, why did you pick cognitive behavioral therapy as today's topic?
You know, I thought it'd be an interesting topic. Oftentimes I receive phone calls from people who are referred from their family doctor or their insurance company seeking a therapist who does cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's pretty popular.
It is very popular. Why do you think it is so popular, though?
Well, I think it's a couple things. It's a good approach. It's well used by just about everybody. I guess that makes it popular. But it's based on the here and now, so there's not a lot of digging back into childhood or things along those lines. It's well established. There's a lot of research that goes behind cognitive behavioral therapy. I actually got the privilege of training with a guy named John Ludgate, and John Ludgate trained directly with Aaron Beck. And Aaron Beck is considered the father of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's a great approach. It's a collaborative approach where it's sort of a partnership between the therapist and the client. And I like it a whole lot. I think it's a really good form of therapy to use.
I think it's very interesting. I actually had a client when you talked about the here and now who was saying, I don't want to see a therapist. All they do is dig way back into your very far past and make you relive all the things. And so I very much do like that about cognitive behavioral therapy, the fact that it's focused very much on let's identify what's going on right now and formulate a plan and work together.
Right, and that's one of the things I like a lot about it. And I think it's practical. I think that there's a lot of truths in lives that we can come across, and cognitive behavioral therapy really just kind of builds on those truths that a lot of us already know.
Right, so and challenges the lies.
It challenges the lies.
So let's go ahead and discuss what some of the tenets are, or some of the primary concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Well, the theory of cognitive behavioral therapy is that it's not really what happens, it's what we believe about what happens. It really takes a look at our perception and our beliefs about things. And sometimes our perceptions are distorted. We have some thought distortions where we get into all or nothing thinking or some other things. And over a period of time, we develop something called a schema, or which is sort of a pattern of how we filter information. And a lot of people, you know, it's kind of that glass half empty, half full sort of thing. They focus either on the positive side or the negative side. And what we find is that those people who are able to find the positive side, that they tend to feel better. They have less anxiety, less depression, and so forth.
I like it. I feel like we need to develop that word perception. That perception is a key component in cognitive behavioral therapy, that we are very definitely looking at how are you perceiving this particular event. And, you know, it's often been said that if someone were to look at the same scenery and each of those 12 people were to paint it, the results would be very different, and it's because people perceive that same scenery from their own lens, from their perspective. So let's go ahead and build more on cognitive behavioral therapy and what the goal of that therapy is.
Oh, sure. You know, and kind of go back to build on what you said about perception, is there was a study done and they took a group of people who were kind of average in their mood, some people who were like overly happy, and some people who were depressed. And the people who are depressed, their perceptions tend to undervalue lots of things. So that there's definitely a role that perception plays. You know, so there's a lot of situations. One of my favorite stories of all time, and in therapy I love to tell stories, and this kind of brings out that perception thing, is a long time ago when I was young, I was on the back of we called it the sea biscuit, or an inner tube on the back of a jet ski. And we're whipping through a cove, and the person who was driving just wasn't very smart. So they take us close to shore and they start to veer off one direction, and we start to swing at the end of the rope, sort of as a pendulum, me and a friend of mine are on the back on the tube, and we're heading towards shore rather rapidly. I grab my friend, pull him over, and we start rolling through the water, and he starts cussing me. And finally I said, John, look. And about that moment, the biscuit is kind of bouncing over these rocks. And he goes, oh, thank you. So what made him so angry? What made him so upset? Well, there were some assumptions. It was an unpleasant experience for him. We're bouncing across the water. He thinks I'm just being stupid or playing a joke or whatever. And the meaning of that situation changed with new information. So that kind of talks about the perception. His initial perception was I was being stupid. His second perception was I was saving his life. So in my life too. So definitely.
Which is an important thing that a therapist can help a person do, is to gain the different perspective, because our life experience can cause us to have a perspective that is skewed one way or the other. And there are actually 3 perspectives that were going on in this example.
Sure.
You had the driver of the boat whose perception was, oh no, we're getting close to shore, but if I turn this way, I'm going to save my friends.
Bad perception.
Wrong perception. And then your friend clearly thought, oh, he's just yanking me off the inner tube for no apparent reason. But once he had that more information, which is a key component of cognitive behavioral therapy, broaden the perception, broaden the perspective.
And, in most everything in life, there's a term we use in cognitive behavioral therapy called ambiguous stimuli. And there's many things in life we really don't know the meaning of it. One time I was driving down the road and somebody cut me off, and I didn't see who it was, and somebody else, the person in the car with me, didn't see. And they're yelling and cussing at this person, and I'm kind of calm. And they go, how can you stay so calm? And I said, well, who knows? Maybe it was a mother whose husband is on military assignment in Iraq, and their baby dropped the bottle, and just for a split second, they reached for it. He goes, you don't know that's true. I said, well, what do you think happened? Oh, it's probably some stupid teenage girl texting. I said, but you know what? You don't know if that's true either. Mm-hmm. We make lots and lots of assumptions. I actually had a kid who had a little bit of anxiety of going to the principal's office. And throughout her life, she'd been to the principal's office probably 4 or 5 times. Each time, it was something positive. But on that 6th time, as she's walking down to the principal's office, she's thinking, what did I do wrong? Am I in trouble? What are my parents going to do? So there are some times that ambiguous stimuli, being called to the principal's office, we assign meaning to it. And that meaning really influences how we think.
I think we also had on one of our slides the idea of the blue lights in the rearview mirror.
Yes.
And I have not had a speeding ticket in over 20 years, I would say. And yet I can still, no blue lights, I can just have a police car in my rearview mirror or off to the side and still get that flutter of, oh no, I'm going to be pulled over. What have I done wrong?
Right.
And it's just because of my wrong perception. Instead of just even recognizing he may just be on his way or she may be on her way to a certain place. So it is interesting. I definitely have an immediate response of, oh no, it's a police officer, I must be in trouble. And that's not true. That's not accurate.
Yeah. So there's some pretty common thought distortions. One of them is all or nothing thinking. Something is either all good or all bad. And there's lots of examples of that. Those words never and always oftentimes work themselves into the conversation. The example I like to use most is a professional baseball player. What's a good batting average for a professional baseball player? 300 is pretty good. That means 7 out of 10 times he's getting out or not getting on base. So when we think about all or nothing thinking, oh, I'm a bad batter because of those times that things don't go the way that we want to. So definitely all or nothing thinking, really focusing on the negative, and they're kind of like intertwined, focusing on the negative and ignoring the positive. Again, that baseball example, instead of focusing, hey, I got 3 hits today, focusing on the times that you strike out or things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And I think what all or nothing thinking does as well is skews it definitely to the negative. I think sometimes as a parent, for example, we'll say, I'll never do a certain thing that our mother or father may do. And then when we do it one time, it immediately can skew a person to think, that's it, I'm a failure. I'm just like what I said I would never be.
Yeah.
Which again, bad perspective, bad perception.
Yeah. It's funny, in a lot of TV programs where you see counselors, they say, trust your gut. But you know what? A lot of times people who suffer from anxiety or depression or some other thought disorders, you can't trust your gut. Mm-hmm. There are things that feel very real. In therapy, I tell this story, and I don't even know if you remember it. There was a time when my daughter was about 8 years old, and I had this very vivid dream that Victoria, my wife, allowed our daughter to walk like 8 miles to the grocery store in the middle of the night. And I woke up the next morning, and as I'm cooking breakfast, I said, why in the, oh, that was just a dream. But you know what? Even after I recognized it was just a dream, I still had some pretty intense feelings of, wow, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. So I felt a lot of things, but they weren't legitimate feelings. They were based on kind of an old thought that wasn't even true. So we have to kind of challenge our thoughts and recognize that sometimes we can't trust our gut. Feelings are indicators, not dictators. And that's a really big concept that in cognitive behavioral therapy is really recognizing that our feelings kind of indicate how we should feel, but they don't control how we feel. And if they do, they're going to usually lead you astray. Sometimes you have to get out of that feeling mode and move back towards what are my thoughts and how do I challenge those thoughts. Some of those techniques that we use is kind of asking ourselves, what else can be true? Are there exceptions to this? How can this be good?
Right. And I want to make that statement again, that feelings are indicators, not dictators. Because as you were talking about with the gut can very often give a person a fight or flight response, which has, when they do physiological studies, is a normal gut reaction to any number of settings. And yet that's where the thinking has got to kick in. And we cannot always fight or run away. We have to stop and think, okay, what's beyond this? There's a reason that I'm having this gut reaction, but what is going on? Why am I having this reaction? Like you said, what else could be true? What is the exception? There could be a blue light in my rear view mirror, but the exception could be that I have a blinker that's not working and I don't know. And he is totally working for my good, So, and how can this be good is another question that we ask in cognitive behavioral therapy.
And I mean, there's a lot of things. A rainy day can cause people to have a lot of beliefs. Most of us in the Clarkston Independence Township area, we get our water through the city. It's all wells. If it doesn't rain, our wells are going to go dry. In Southern California today, if it started raining, I think people would be rejoicing. So again, we got to ask ourselves, what can be good about this? What is the truth in that situation? And really challenge some of those negative thoughts.
So let's even look, we've been doing a lot about the thinking, but what about the behavioral part? Is cognitive behavioral therapy. So why the emphasis on, why behavioral even in there? Why isn't it just called cognitive therapy?
That's interesting. Most of it is cognitively based. Most cognitive behavioral therapy is really about the thoughts, but the behaviors that go along with it. If you believe something, how are you going to act? And it's one of those situations where I frequently talk about the ice, and I live across the street from the lake here in Michigan, and come December, I usually go out on the lake. It's one thing to say, okay, I believe that the ice is safe. It's another thing to walk across it. And oftentimes we have to take that next step. I believe that even though my parents are critical, they love me. Well, how do I take that to the next step? What is the behavior that I engage? Because I believe they love me, and I may actually take their advice. I may further explore. I may try to find verification of the information that they're giving me. So the behavior part of it is how do we take that belief and turn it into a behavior? And eventually, how is that going to shape our feelings?
Absolutely. So the way that we think absolutely affects our behavior, without a doubt. If I'm thinking that my parents are for me, like you said, even if it's a criticism, then I can know, but I can trust them, and they love me, and they have my best interest at heart. And sometimes, I love the ice example, because we've been really bad as a family to let the big guy go first. And we'll let him be the one that tests the ice, and if he's going out pretty far and it's all good, then we know we can trust it. And that can be true in people's lives that we see they're doing it well. If you know someone who is more a glass half full and you're more of a glass half empty, sometimes we can watch, what are they doing? What are they thinking? How are they doing this differently? Let them test the ice and then follow some of those examples.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people, when you ask them what they believe, they will say, I believe I should go to high school. I believe I should go to work today. And then you ask them, did you go to work today? Well, no. Well, why do you believe you should go? Well, it'll help my future. It's a requirement. Bad things will happen. And so there's a level of belief that we need to sometimes increase. Sometimes, the Bible talks about, I believe, help my unbelief. Sometimes in therapy, we have to work on that. Hey, I believe this, but how much do we believe it? And how much are we believe it so we can put it into action? And that involves sometimes saying, I believe this, and I know it's true, but it doesn't feel right, is really fighting those feelings and focusing on what we know to be true.
And that's where, with the feelings, I really like the magic twos, because with the magic twos, we're asking ourselves, is this going to matter? And with those feelings, sometimes it can feel like it matters a great deal. But is this really going to matter in 2 minutes? Is this going to matter in 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks from now? And as I process that, as you process that, very often we can talk that emotional feeling down and start recognizing, you know what, this isn't going to matter. A lot of what we get upset about is not going to matter even in 2 minutes, but particularly in 2 hours, and especially in 2 days or 2 weeks. And so the magic twos can be very effective in helping us to just talk it down and start normalizing that it doesn't have to be such a big deal.
Right. And just to kind of repeat myself a little bit, I think it's important for us to remember some of the techniques. That if we start to have a feeling, a negative thought, ask ourselves what else could be true. Is there anything good that can come out of this? And there are some things that are just legitimately bad, and maybe we won't be able to come up with them, but we need to put it in perspective. Is this really going to matter in 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks? And are we spending more energy on something that's going to be gone briefly than we are, moving on into the life that we need to be living? And
again, that's where that cognitive is so important. The way I am thinking about something is significantly impacting the emotion that's attached. So if I'm always assuming when I get called to the principal's office or to the human resource office that the intent, my thought is this is bad, then the emotion is going to be the same. And so that's where I have to challenge, why am I assuming that this is bad? This could potentially be I'm getting a raise, I'm getting a promotion, I'm being recognized for something that I did really well at work. So that's the reason, that's that connection. How I think is going to greatly impact how I feel.
Right. And it's funny because a lot of times I have some cynical clients and they'll say, am I just making things up? Am I just working on something and just making believe? And it's interesting, one of the things I come back to those people with is, you really are, but towards the negative. There are some things we really don't know the meaning of. Somebody cuts us off, what does it mean? That could mean that they hate the way that you look, and they hate the color of your car, and they hate everything about you, and they did it intentionally, just trying to kill you. That might be true. I doubt it is, but it might be. It could be a situation where it's just a good person who got distracted. And what we believe about that situation really influences how we feel. And the most people who say to me, hey, this is just playing make-believe and pretending, you are pretending towards the negative. And we can shape our own thoughts and feel better about things by at least giving that possibility that there's other interpretations.
And what's interesting about what you're saying too is that cognitive behavioral therapy alone has been shown to be as effective as medication.
Yes.
So the power of the mind, the power of our thinking is physiological. It does have a physiological impact on us.
Yep.
And so it is important. So the person can choose, like you said, it could be true that the person deliberately cut you off, and you can choose to believe that, or you can choose, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Definitely.
And which one is going to have a better impact on me? And choosing the positive way of thinking about it affects me positively.
Yep.
And guess what? Choosing the negative doesn't affect the other person at all.
No, it doesn't. So I just want to wrap up. In conclusion, cognitive behavioral therapy is widely used. If you go to your doctor, you're depressed, he may say, hey, find a cognitive behavioral therapist. Learn to challenge some of those negative thoughts. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself in a situation where it's just too difficult, where you're having a hard time doing it on your own, get some help. Call a therapist. Look for somebody who specializes in this, and it'll definitely help you out. And just wanted to thank everybody for watching the show today. Mm-hmm. It's been awesome to have this opportunity. If you do have any further questions, feel free to call us at 248-248 245-1809, or you can email us at guidance@clarkstonlighthousecounseling.com. Thank you so much for watching the show.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
The views expressed in this show are for general educational purposes only and do not constitute professional advice on any subject matter, nor do they necessarily reflect the views or opinions of its guests or of Independence Television. If mental health assistance is needed, please seek professional licensed treatment.